Wilson's exclusion from the Team USA camp was newsworthy, but her reaction was the real headline. Rather than accepting the challenge, she chose to undermine Caitlin Clark's success with thinly veiled digs and inflated claims about her own endorsements. Her online behavior wasn't just immature. It confirmed what many already suspected. Wilson is more focused on image battles than team impact.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
As Clark continues to break records and gain global traction, Wilson's resentment only highlights how far she's fallen from being a role model in the sport. Wilson's campaign to stay relevant has backfired. Instead of amplifying her own brand, she's made herself the cautionary tale of how not to handle competition. While Clark quietly becomes the face of global women's basketball, Wilson's legacy is being rewritten, not by stats, but by her inability to rise above ego and accept that the game has moved on without her. And Aya Wilson. Aya Wilson did not make the Team USA training camp roster. Caitlin Clark did. And Aya's reaction wasn't quiet, graceful, or professional. It was a full-scale meltdown. This December camp is more than just a few practices. It's the launch pad for the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympics. It's where the future of women's basketball gets chosen. And the fact that Caitlin Clark, a newcomer to the pro scene, got the invite, while Aya Wilson, a decorated veteran, did not, sent shockwaves through the league. But instead of accepting that the game is evolving, Wilson chose the route of jealousy and self-sabotage. And Sue Bird. The camp roster, led by Sue Bird and designed to assess the country's top talent, included rising stars like Paige Butters, Juju Watkins, and of course, Caitlin Clark. That group represents where women's basketball is heading. Fast, global, commercial, and connected. Clark fits that mold perfectly, doesn't? And her response showed exactly why. While Clark stayed focused on training, preparation, and keeping her head down, Wilson jumped online. Her first move? A passive-aggressive campaign that centered around her own shoe deal, a not-so-subtle jab at Clark's recent Nike partnership. The timing wasn't coincidental. It was calculated, reactive, and insecure. Instead of celebrating the success of a young athlete bringing millions of new fans to the sport, Wilson made it about herself. She launched a "I have a shoe too" campaign that backfired hard. Not because it was wrong to be proud of her accomplishments, but because it was so clearly motivated by bitterness. The message wasn't "I've worked hard too." The message was "Why her and not me?" That question was already being answered by the facts. Clark is everywhere. Nike, ESPN, international headlines, crossover deals in golf and business, record-smashing viewership, and merchandise that sells out in hours. Her impact isn't confined to the court. It's reshaping the entire marketing ecosystem of women's sports. She's the cultural force the league has been waiting for. And Wilson? She's becoming the cautionary tale of what happens when you can't handle being replaced. She's made it clear that Clark's rise isn't just uncomfortable for her, it's unacceptable. Her social media presence has devolved into thinly veiled shade, ego-driven posts, and a stream of comparisons no one asked for. She spent more time trying to undercut Clark's success than improving her own standing with the team. Wilson's claim that her earnings matched Clark's was another unforced error. No one was talking about pay until Wilson brought it up. And when she did, it wasn't to uplift the sport. It was to prove a point rooted in envy. The problem is, no one was disputing her worth. But dragging down Clark's name to validate her own? That's not strength. That's desperation. And it's been noticed. Her antics haven't gone viral in the way she probably hoped. The reactions weren't supportive. They were confused. Fans called it out. Brands went silent. The media barely touched it. Because there's a fine line between competitiveness and insecurity, and Wilson erased it. Caitlin Clark didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her presence at Team USA camp said everything. Clark isn't there because she's lucky. She's there because she represents everything this new era of women's basketball is built around. Visibility, professionalism, humility, and scale. Her endorsements aren't just paycheck generators. They're proof that the market believes in her, that companies trust her face on their products, that networks know she brings an audience, that fans from college kids to retirees show up when she plays. Team USA saw that. So did the rest of the world. And Aya Wilson. Meanwhile, Wilson's behavior over the last few months has shown why she wasn't on that list. The jealousy, the public digs, the refusal to acknowledge change. It's not the mindset of someone ready to lead on an international stage. And that's what this is really about. Leadership. Clark is leading in ways Wilson never did. On the court, she makes the players around her better. Off the court, she represents something bigger than herself. She's not just playing in a league. She's building had that opportunity. She was the face of the Las Vegas Aces, one of the league's most successful teams. She had every chance to be the one to bridge eras. Instead, she chose to gatekeep. And now she's watching the game evolve without her. The invite to Team USA wasn't just about who can score the most or who has the most rings. It was about who can move the game forward. And Wilson, despite her talent, showed through her own actions that she's not interested in doing that unless she's at the center of it. She had a choice: uplift the sport or compete with it. She chose competition. And because the game doesn't reward bitterness, it rewards growth. Clark is growing in every direction. Her image is clean. Her attitude is grounded. Her approach is strategic. While Wilson is on Instagram trying to win sympathy, Clark is in the gym building a legacy. Team USA isn't in the business of pleasing egos. It's about assembling a team that reflects the future of the sport. Clark's selection makes that future look exciting, progressive, and global. Wilson's absence, while glaring, is justified. This isn't about erasing her past success. No one is taking away her accolades. But no amount of MVPs protects you from being left behind when you stop evolving. Wilson's game is still elite, but her mindset is outdated. And she's showing it to everyone. The new wave of women's basketball isn't interested in petty rivalries and backhanded compliments. It's about collaboration, influence, and who can bring the most to the table. Right now, Clark brings more on every level. And Wilson's refusal to accept that is what's keeping her off the roster. Not a snub, not favoritism, her own behavior. So where does that leave her? Stuck, lashing out on social media, launching awkward campaigns, comparing paychecks, and watching a younger, more relevant star take the role she thought would always belong to her. And Aya Wilson. And that's the real story here. This isn't about Team USA making a surprising decision. It's about a veteran athlete failing to rise above her own insecurities and missing the opportunity to stay part of something bigger. Caitlin Clark is redefining what it means to be a star in women's basketball. And she's doing it by focusing on the game, the fans, and the future. Aya Wilson is clinging to the past, refusing to accept the evolution happening right in front of her. And now, she's on the outside looking close face. Let us know what you think. Was Wilson right to feel slighted? Has she damaged her own brand with these public stunts? And is Clark already proving she's the leader the sport needs? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're watching the shift play out in real time. Share it with someone who still thinks legacy alone earns you a spot on Team USA. And subscribe, because the rise of Caitlin Clark is just getting started. The future is here, and Aya Wilson, whether she likes it or not, is officially in the rear view. Let's call it what it is. Aya Wilson's reaction to Caitlin Clark's rise, and more specifically, Clark's Team USA invite, wasn't just unprofessional. It was a masterclass in self-sabotage. Because the headlines weren't about Wilson being snubbed. They were about how she responded after being passed over. And instead of staying composed, instead of using her platform to support the sport or show leadership as a veteran, she let the jealousy pour out in real time. One post, one petty campaign, one defensive quote at a time. And the more she tried to center herself, the more obvious it became. This wasn't just about basketball. It was about ego and Aya Wilson. Let's rewind to the actual news drop. Clark makes the Team USA training camp roster. Wilson doesn't. The internet lights up. Fans are excited. Media outlets immediately recognize the symbolic weight of the moment. A college-era superstar with massive cultural cachet is finally stepping into the international spotlight. And how does Wilson respond? Not with a congratulatory post. Not with any kind of silence that might signal maturity. No, she launches her own counter-programming. Her "I have a shoe too" rollout drops like it was scheduled purely out of spite. And then come the social media jabs, subtweets, and posts questioning the value of endorsements, questioning the real reasons behind Clark's rise. That's not leadership. That's not grace. That's not the energy of someone secure in their own legacy. That's the energy of someone watching the spotlight move and scrambling to pull it back. And it wasn't subtle. Everyone saw it. Everyone understood what was happening. And Aya Wilson. Because when Caitlin Clark got the call from Team USA, it wasn't just about skill. It was about marketability, impact, and direction. It was a confirmation that the sport isn't just about who scores the most anymore. It's about who grows the game, who brings eyes, who moves numbers, sells tickets, creates moments, and elevates everyone around them. Clark's doing that. Wilson isn't. In fact, Wilson's behavior is starting to do the opposite. Instead of bringing people together, she's dividing the conversation. Instead of boosting the league's image, she's pulling it into drama. And for what? To prove a point? To claw back attention? Let's be brutally honest here. Aya Wilson is still a talented athlete. That hasn't changed. But she's no longer the center of the women's basketball universe. And the more she fights that reality, the more she damages what could have been a graceful transition into a respected vet role. Because here's the thing, Clark didn't push Wilson out. She simply rose higher, faster. She broke records. She shifted narratives. She brought in new fans by the millions. She did what the league needed, what it's always needed. And she did it without taking shots, without demanding comparisons, without diminishing anyone else in the process. Clark earned her seat. She didn't take Wilson's. She made a new one. But that distinction seems lost on Wilson, who keeps painting herself as the victim of media hype, as if Clark's success is somehow artificially inflated, as if her own absence from Team USA is some kind of injustice. It's not. It's just reality. Wilson's declining relevance isn't a conspiracy. It's a consequence of bitterness, of bad choices, of repeatedly choosing pettiness over professionalism. And Aya Wilson. Because while Clark is spending her time preparing for international competition, expanding her brand across multiple industries, and showing up for her teammates, Wilson is too busy trying to drag her down. That's not a rivalry. That's a distraction. And it's hurting her career more than any exclusion from Team USA ever could. The thing is, Wilson could have taken this moment and used it to pivot. She could have embraced Clark's rise and positioned herself as a mentor, a veteran voice, a unifier in a league that's finally getting the attention it deserves. She could have reminded everyone why she mattered, without needing to tear anyone else down to do it. But she didn't. Instead, she gave us thinly veiled bitterness, a shoe rollout no one asked for, and a social media feed that looks less like confidence and more like crisis control. Even her comments about money, comparing her salary to Clark's, missed the point entirely. It was a weak attempt to level the playing field through dollar signs, but it only highlighted just how much she resents Clark's visibility. Because when you're really secure in your earnings, your influence, your lane, you don't need to bring receipts. You let your work speak. And Wilson's work, lately, hasn't been speaking. It's been shouting. Loud, defensive, and tone-deaf. Meanwhile, Clark continues to do what rising stars do. Keep winning, keep growing, keep ignoring the noise. And that is what makes her team USA material. Clark didn't just earn her spot through shooting percentages. She earned it through presence, through focus, through the ability to carry an entire league's narrative without dragging anyone else down to do it. She's the player the world wants to see more of. She's the name that sells jerseys, the story that breaks into mainstream media, the figure that puts women's basketball on the front page, not because of controversy, but because of excellence. And Team USA sees that. They didn't leave Wilson off the list because they forgot her. They left her off because she's no longer the one who represents the moment. The future isn't built on resentment. It's built on has made it clear she isn't ready for what progress looks like when it doesn't revolve around her. And unfortunately for her, the game isn't waiting around for her to catch up. Because women's basketball is entering a new era. One driven by cultural crossover, by global reach, by athletes who know how to inspire without antagonizing. Athletes who understand the spotlight isn't something you fight for. It's something you earn, and something you respect once you have it. Clark understands that. Wilson doesn't. And the deeper she leans into her jealousy, the more she confirms what fans and brands have already sensed. She's becoming more of a liability than a leader. That doesn't mean her playing days are over, but it does mean her moment at the top is. And if she doesn't course correct fast, she'll find herself remembered not just for the game she played, but for the grace she didn't show when it mattered most. Aya Wilson had the resume. She had the accolades. She had the fan base, the respect, the platform. And now, she's turning all of it into a cautionary tale. Let's be clear, this isn't about her talent. No one's denying that she's been one of the most dominant forces in the WNBA. But dominance doesn't guarantee relevance. Not anymore, because the game has changed. And instead of growing with it, Wilson has been trying to rewind the clock back to when she was the face of the league, and only her. Caitlin Clark's rise didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't overnight. It was years of relentless performance, undeniable star power, and the ability to connect with people way beyond the court. Clark didn't just play basketball. She brought people in. Kids, casual fans, non-sports watchers, brands, networks. She filled arenas. She shattered viewership records. She turned college basketball into primetime television. So when Team USA extended the invite, it wasn't just because of potential. It was because Clark is already a force that can move markets. And Wilson? She couldn't handle it. Instead of recognizing Clark as a game changer, Wilson treated her like a threat, a competitor, someone stealing her spotlight. And that reaction, unfiltered, defensive, borderline petty, did more damage than any roster snub ever. And Aya Wilson. When you've been at the top for a long time, it's easy to believe you're untouchable, that your name will always be called, that you'll always be the one. But the reality is, sports don't work that way. Legacy is only as strong as your last season. And even then, if you're not helping push the game forward, someone else will take your place. Clark isn't just taking Wilson's place. She's reshaping what the face of the league even means. This isn't just about who scores more. It's about who sells more, who inspires more, who draws international eyes. And when you compare Clark and Wilson on those metrics, it's not even response has made it worse. She didn't just fail to show humility. She actively fought the narrative. She pushed back in ways that felt more like a tantrum than a statement. She centered herself in conversations that were never about her. And every time she tried to prove she was still that girl, she ended up confirming the opposite. There's a difference between confidence and insecurity. And Wilson has been showing the world exactly what the latter looks like under pressure. She could have taken a high road. She could have congratulated Clark. She could have reminded fans that there's space in this sport for multiple stars. But instead, she went into look-at-me mode. And the internet clocked it instantly. Fans noticed. Brands noticed. Even teammates noticed. Because when you're more focused on managing your ego than leading your team or representing your sport, people stop buying what you're selling. Wilson thought launching a shoe campaign right after Clark's Nike deal would reclaim her spotlight. But all it did was make the comparisons louder. And it didn't land the way she thought it would. Because instead of looking like a power move, it looked like a reaction. An attempt to hijack someone else's moment. Clark didn't respond. She didn't need to. That's silence? That's power. That's focus. That's someone who understands the assignment. And it's part of the reason why she's going to the Team USA training camp, and Wilson isn't. Let's talk about what that training camp actually means. It's not just a warm-up. It's the gateway to the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympics. The eyes of the world will be on these games. The host cities, the fans, the sponsors, the media, everyone will be watching. Team USA needs faces. Not just players who can score, but players who can represent. They need global icons. Leaders, communicators, players who bring fans in and make them stay. Clark checks every box. And Wilson? She's still posting about herself, clinging to metrics that don't matter anymore. This isn't 2019. The standards have changed. Fans expect more than athleticism. They want access, personality, presence. They want stars who feel like stars, who make them care. Clark is doing that, in real time. And every second she does, Wilson's defiance looks more out of and Io Wilson. Let's also be real about the business side. Team USA's decisions aren't just basketball-based, they're economic. Clark brings dollars. She brings global interest. She brings youth audiences and international sponsors who couldn't care less about who won MVP in the bubble season. And Wilson doesn't like that. But that's not Clark's problem. That's hers. The game isn't built to reward those who just want to stay comfortable. It rewards those who evolve, those who build, those who lift the game up, not hold a hostage. Wilson had her time. She was the face. But now she's dragging her own image down with every petty move. Every online dig. Every interview laced with resentment. And all of it is drowning out what should have been her greatest strength, her actual game. Because here's the truth. Io Wilson is still elite. Still capable. Still competitive. But none of that matters if your off-court presence becomes a liability. No coach wants the distraction. No team wants the drama. No brand wants the baggage. That's why Clark is the one who's rising. Not just because of her shot, but because of her composure. She handles pressure without panicking. She accepts praise without flaunting. And she lets her performance speak louder than any tweet ever could. She's showing the league and the world what it looks like when you blend athleticism with maturity. And that's exactly what Team USA needs heading into the next cycle. Meanwhile, Wilson is showing the other side of the coin. What it looks like when jealousy overtakes judgment. When insecurity becomes more visible than your stats. And at this point, there's no amount of damage control that can undo how she's chosen to carry herself since that camp invite list dropped. She could have stayed silent. She could have stayed professional. She could have stayed relevant. But she didn't. And now the narrative is writing itself. Io Wilson, once the shining example of WNBA excellence, is now the symbol of what happens when you mistake attention for impact and start fighting battles that no one else is even in. Caitlin Clark? She's not in that fight. She's too busy training, too busy representing, too busy becoming the kind of player that brands, fans, and nations want to build around. That's the difference. And that's why Clark is walking into Team USA camp as the face of the future, while Wilson watches from the sidelines, wondering how it all slipped away. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Io Wilson's response justified? Or did she just expose what she was trying to hide? Is Clark already carrying the weight of a new generation? Like if you've been tracking this messy unraveling in real time. Share it with someone who's still defending Wilson's behavior. And subscribe when not done. Not even close. Because the game is moving forward. And Io Wilson? She's the lesson, not the legacy.